Hi everyone and welcome to this new video where I'm going to talk about how to identify notes by ear. More specifically, I'm going to explain how you can identify notes by ear without using any musical instruments. So you can recognize notes just by using your ear alone. This way, for example, you can listen to a song while driving your car, and at the same time you can analyze and recognize the notes that are included in the melody. Before going ahead with the video, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and leave a like to this video. Other than that, I recommend you check out our website. You will find our free workshop there. It's a 3-hour long introductory lesson to our ear training method. It's full of valuable content that will help you a lot with your ear training journey. It will help you understand why you're stuck on some exercises and how to practice your training properly based on your current skill level. Moreover, it will show the scientific foundations behind our ear training method. Therefore, it will also provide you a clear path forward to practice your training effectively. It's still free at the moment, so don't miss out on it. Just check it out by clicking the link in the description section below. Okay, back to the topic of the video. Let's talk about how to identify notes by ear. Well, the best way to identify notes and melodies by ear is to understand the scale degrees that the notes assume inside the key of the musical piece. So there are two main steps to this. One is to identify the scale, the key in which the musical piece is playing in, which can be done pretty quickly if you know how to do it, if you're trained to do that. So this first step could be very, very intuitive and very, very quick. Like just in a split second, you can identify the tonic note of the key in which the music is playing in. And so you know the scale and you know what notes are going to fit into that tonality. Then, after you know that, you can go on the second step and recognize the scale degree of each note that you want to recognize. Once you've understood the scale degrees of each note, it's then very easy to understand what notes to play on your instrument in order to recreate a particular melody or any set of notes really. So the most difficult part here is to actually recognize the scale degrees. And this is where most musicians have difficulties, and it's where most musicians honestly take some wrong and ineffective approaches that don't allow them to develop the right cognitive processes that allows for intuitive recognition of scale degrees. So they have to actually put in a lot of rational effort, and it's very time consuming for them to recognize notes by ear alone because they are using inefficient thought processes. Okay, so what am I talking about exactly? Well, I'm referring to interval-based thought processes. So basically, a lot of musicians try to understand a set of notes by thinking of each individual interval separately without understanding that there's always a key behind a melody, and that recognizing the key and recognizing the scale allows you to have a framework where you can work much faster and without making a ton of calculations about intervals and distances and things like that. So that's one of the reasons why I don't suggest students and musicians to identify notes by ear using an interval-based approach. I have made a specific video about that where I also show all the scientific studies that back up my claims. I suggest you check out that video. You will find a link to it up here and another link in the description section below. So the point is that interval-based cognitive processes are not the best way to recognize and identify notes by ear. So then what's the best way to do that? Well, there are 3 main cognitive mechanisms that allow us to recognize, to identify notes by ear efficiently and effectively. I call them the 3 mechanisms of note recognition. Let's see them. Let's start with the first mechanism. The first mechanism of recognizing notes by ear involves identifying the scale degree of a note by feeling its keys color. The keys color is not a visual color. I've made a specific video where I talk about it. You can find a link up here and in the description section below. But basically, the keys color is the specific sensation that a scale degree has. We have 7 notes inside the key, and each one of these 7 scale degrees has a very specific sensation. And this sensation is always the same no matter which key we're playing in. So the first degree note of the major key sounds exactly the same in every major key, no matter if it's the C major key or the F major key or the E major key or whatever. The same reasoning is true for minor scales. So this means that we can internalize these 7 different feelings, which are the key's color, and then when we hear them in a song, we can immediately recognize them. So it becomes like recognizing visual color. When you see blue, for example, you don't have to think, oh, is it blue or red or green? You just recognize it immediately. It's blue, okay? In the same way, using the first mechanism of note recognition, we can identify notes in a very intuitive way. As you can guess, this doesn't involve thinking of intervals. Indeed, thinking of intervals will actually hinder your ability to develop the first mechanism of note recognition. Let's now talk about the second mechanism of note recognition, which involves recognizing notes, identifying notes by ear by thinking of the scale. This means that we help ourselves by singing the scale up and down in order to identify the scale degree of a note. So for example, let's say that I hear a musical piece and I identify the tonic note of the musical piece. And the tonic note is this note. Da. Then I hear a note that I want to recognize. And the note is this. Da. Okay? What I have to do is to simply sing the scale starting from that note down to the tonic note. Da, da, da. So this way I know that I had to sing 3 steps in order to reach the tonic. This means that the note I wanted to recognize was the 3rd degree of the scale. That's just a simple example on how the second mechanism of note recognition works. The second mechanism is, of course, more simple to apply than the first mechanism, so it's what I suggest students to begin with. But the important thing to understand is that when recognizing real melodies in real music, we usually apply both mechanisms. Also, the second mechanism can get very fast, but at the beginning it's slow. So it's normal to start by being slow at recognizing notes. What matters is that you adopt the right cognitive process, because if you do so, you will become faster at it. If you apply wrong thought processes that can't get any faster than that, you will waste your time. So this is why it's important to think in a very specific way in your training, because by doing that, you actually train something that can get you faster and allows you to develop intuitive skills that can be applied in real musical scenarios when you don't have time to think and to second guess yourselves, but you have to actually be very quick and very confident at recognizing notes and chords. Let's now talk about the third mechanism of note recognition, which involves identifying group of notes by referring to higher order familiar patterns. Okay, this is a more advanced concept, so if you're just beginning to recognizing and identifying notes by ear, this might not be for you at this moment, but just so you understand, thanks to this mechanism, you can actually identify multiple notes at the same time. For example, let's say that I hear a melody like this. Da 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 da. With the third mechanism, I can recognize that the initial part of the melody, the one that goes da da da, is a portion of the scale. Without having to identify the exact notes, I immediately hear, oh, this is a portion of the scale. And then I can identify like the first note and I immediately recognize the other 2. Or the same, I can recognize the last note and identify the one that come before it. So in this case, it's just 1, 2, 3. It's first, second, and third degree of the scale. So I can identify this set of note as a group of note that reminds me of the scale. This way, I have immediately recognized 3 notes at once, basically. This is just a simple example of the third mechanism. It doesn't work just with the scale. Any higher order familiar pattern can be used. What is a higher order familiar pattern? It's basically everything that helps you associate a set of notes with the ones that you're listening to and you're trying to recognize. For example, it can be like a portion of a melody that you're very familiar with. Maybe you just remember Jingle Bells very well, and you hear a portion of another melody that goes in the same way, is hitting the same scale degrees, and so that you can recognize multiple notes at once. It could be triads or portion of triads. It could be like chords, arpeggios, or anything else that you're very familiar with, and it allows you to immediately identify a set of notes that you're listening to as associated to that pattern of notes that you know very well. Again, as I've said before, this is an advanced concept, so for sure if you're starting to identify notes by ear, this is something that it's better to leave aside for now and just focus on the first and second mechanisms of note recognition. If you want to have a more in-depth explanation about these three mechanisms and about how to recognize notes by ear, I invite you to watch a previous video I made, which is a bit more in-depth than this one. You will find the link to it up here and in the description section below. That being said, it's all for this video. If you have questions, just leave them in the comment section below. I invite you to subscribe to the channel and to leave a like to this video. I also invite you to check out our website where you can find all our paid courses and also our free workshop. Again, it includes a ton of valuable content for anyone who's interested in ear training. It's all based on scientific researches and our experience of working with hundreds of ear training students one-on-one, plus the experience we gained by having thousands of students currently subscribed to our course. You will find all the relevant links in the description section below. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.